Oh yeah. Question was, if I look at Marie Amelie and Katie Grand's work, can I tell their voice, right? So with Marie Amelie, I see it's very, it's a very artistic aesthetic. Like it's all about the shape of the clothes. Like you can tell that she loves clothes. And she creates these shapes and it's like super art and it's really chic and it's really expensive. Like she's all about chic, 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 chic. And I mean, and she has fun, she's like a little bit of a fun cartoony thing sometimes. But it's all about the shapes really with her. So her woman is definitely intellectual. Like it's a chic intellectual woman. And it's a little bit asexual. I don't know if she would like me saying that, but to me there's not a sex factor. Like I always have a sex factor, like that's my thing. That's what I love about Katie Grand too. She always has, there's always like a sex factor going on. But with Marie Amelie, it's like, it's intellectual chic, like that's her woman. Does that make sense? Have you seen her work?
Yes, but
yeah.
you know, Grace Connington is easy to point.
Well, because she's the,
super easy,
totally.
But, you know,
Marie Amelie is really, when you get into the intellectuals, usually the intellectual ones they're the hardest ones to, and it's interesting because some of them don't do so well, I think because of that. But then there's ones like Marie Amelie, you know, it's like, the cool thing about when I was working with her, we were doing Gucci, which is, in my opinion, sometimes couldn't be the exact, like couldn't be more of an opposite from the intellectual chic woman. I mean, not that a Gucci woman's stupid or anything, but she's definitely sexy, she's very rock and roll. Like even Tom's Gucci woman was that. And we were working with Frida in her first couple seasons. And it was really cool to watch Marie Amelie do what she does. When she started applying her voice to the Gucci voice, the mixture was incredible. You know, because it's like, one of my favorite things about Miuccia Prada, and she's always like, it's about mixing opposites. And I love to do that too in my work. Even though it's not really part of my voice, I love to mix high and low, rich and poor, you know, the wrong and right, but you know, black and white, and it makes things seem so extreme sometimes. And when you put together, watching Marie Amelie's vision kind of come together with what Frida's vision was for Gucci, it was an incredible collaboration. It's really, really beautiful, because it kind of is somewhere met in the middle, but not in a diluted way, but in either one of them working on their own. Like if they had just gotten another sexy stylist in, it would have been so over the top. It would have almost been like Versace. But that was, it was Frida's first season. I want to say it's maybe like spring or fall 2005? 2004, 2005. It's probably on style.com, or I don't know if you have catwalking. So yeah. So I mean, thanks for bringing that, because it's good. It's good to watch. Like sometimes a person will hire me because we have the same voice. Sometimes people will hire me because they want my voice and they do something totally different. Yeah, totally different. So it's good to, but it's like our calling card. Like that's why they brought in Marie Amelie to work with Gucci, because like they knew that they didn't want it to go over the top sex. They wanted to bring that chic intellectual woman into the picture. Not that she wasn't already, but just to kind of drive that message. And that's why they choose different stylists. So, any more questions about that?
Yeah, when stylists do shows, like how often is it just typically by designer, like they'll keep with someone for a while? Or
it depends. Some people are really loyal. Like Marc Jacobs has worked with Venetia Scott since like the beginning. And I don't think she's ever going anywhere.
And Katie's been doing Louis shows
for a long time. Before Katie was Alex White. Yeah, and before Alex White was Brada Wolf. So people do change. Like I think as people's strategies change, as their own personal voice, because designers have their own voices. And that's a lot, we'll talk about that with commercial work and with runway work and all of that stuff, that you have to figure out what their voice is in order to learn how to take care of them. Because you still have to look, it's like, I call it putting on goggles. It's like I go into a client, I'm like, okay, I gotta put on my goggles and like look from their perspective, because I can't just do it from my perspective. I mean, I can do that to make myself happy, but it's not gonna get me booked again. So I really, with shows, I mean, there's some shows I've done one season and I was out. Like it just didn't work. Because there's also personality stuff. There's a lot of stuff around that too. because you're with someone a lot, and it's really intimate. You're literally like at a table like this with someone for 8 days, 20-hour days, sometimes, and you're just like, you will start to want to claw someone's eyes out, you know, and you have to be able to maintain this like professionalism and taking care of this person. And sometimes it's like, I'm just like, I can't work with them again because I will go crazy. I will pull out my hair. You know, and that's, I'm working on that. You know, I'm working on being able to kind of like not let it bother me as much. But I mean, also, those aren't the people who drive me crazy like that, they're not the most successful people. But I have to learn how to work with them and make it work with them until I can get to the next tier. So people are different. You know, and sometimes you work with a designer and it just clicks, and it just works, and you'll be with them for so many seasons. And then, you know, and then there's some, especially when you start to get into the luxury groups and the designers who have a very, very large budget to work with you, you'll get a contract. And stylists will get consultancy contracts, and we're going to talk about consultancies. That's where all the money is consultant. That's what we all work for. We work for consultancies. In high fashion, it's like consultancies, you get those contracts, your year's done. You have to fulfill and make them happen and make your client happy, but you know, that's what we all work for, is those and runway shows lead to them, and commercial jobs lead to them. Very rarely does editorial, because you have to do like a commercial job first, but we'll get into all that. The conversation about consulting, and you'll see, consultancies are so great when you get to that level, because it becomes really simple. Like what you're doing for them is really straightforward and really simple. It's not as much like crazy work, like organizational work and stuff for like 2 weeks. It's like a beautiful 6 months or a year where you can just really get to know your customer and really learn how to take care of them and develop amazing strategies and fulfill them and like that. So, I mean, that's what shows are. So, yeah, eventually, like every company is different. Every designer is different, because it also depends what they have going on, what they're trying to do for their demographic, their customer, what's going on with their sales. Like with the person that I worked with here in New York, when I worked with them and their sales went up 200%, they didn't expect that. They had never worked with a stylist who could do that before. So when I did it, they were like, the next day after the show, they're like, after they saw the reviews too, because they got the best reviews that they've ever gotten, they were like, okay, we're booking you right now for next season. So it was done. You know, so when you really hit it, and you really get someone, and you really take care of them, and you really elevate what they're doing, because a lot of what we do is brand elevation. And you know, you have to have your voice to kind of figure that out first, I think, but that's what we're doing. It's like, if we can elevate a brand, and that drives those sales up, and that drives that PR up, I mean, they're pretty much done. They'll put the contract in front of you quick. So, does that answer your question?
And yes, but also like why, like for instance, Louis Spring 10, like why did Katie do the show and Amelie do the campaign?
Campaign and show are different. Her contract is not for the campaigns. And I cover that in our, we're talking about consultancies today actually. Consultancies cover different things. And for some people, it's the ad campaign, it's the show, you work with the designers from the beginning of the collection, which is what I love doing, because you're really creating a story from nothing. And you're a really huge part of that process. Like working with a designer and being able to say, okay, what do we want to do? And they're like, oh, we're going to do fairy tales. And then going and doing all this amazing old illustration research on fairy tales. And then translating that inside of the designer's voice and my voice, but working with them to kind of guide them from the collection process before they've even chosen fabrics. It's like, that's what I work for. That's what I love doing, because it's like, it's the real, you know, guts of it. And working from that kind of beginning stage. And that's what Katie does with Vuitton, from what I know. I mean, I didn't write her contract, so, but I know that she works with Mark on the show and with the whole team. You know, down to like picking the shoe. I mean, picking the heel for the shoe, the color for the tip of the, you know, and that kind of stuff is like incredible. But yeah, because for Vuitton, it depends on who the photographer is. A photographer chooses with ad jobs. Ad jobs are tricky because it's changing with the internet, with what's happening right now. And stylists over the last 10 years have become more powerful than we've ever been. And sometimes sometimes depending on someone's contract, the stylist will choose the photographer for the ad campaign and also do the ad campaign, sometimes. But then sometimes it still works the old way, where photographers are are major clients for stylists. Because if you are doing amazing editorial with them and shooting, and they love what you do for them editorially, and you're giving them some of the best work, because it's their work too, then they will put you on their ad jobs, every single one. And I mean, it can be millions of dollars. Hundreds of thousands when you first start on that, when you're really going there. I mean, but it can turn into huge lucrative. And then, then you're with the client, so you create the relationship with the client, and then sometimes you can scoop the show. Because this is competition. Although I'm friends with a lot of stylists, and I love being friends with them, and talking to them about what we do is so important for me, and a lot of them give me jobs at the magazines that give me my other jobs, but it is a competition. So, sometimes it's like, oh, okay, I can take really good care of that client, and if there's any doubt that they're not being taken care of with their stylist they're with, they'll move. So, yeah, it's not always, consultancies come in all sorts of shapes and forms. So, which is what's so great about them. Because it's like sometimes you only want to do, sometimes I only want to practice in one area, oh, I don't want to deal with all their marketing, I just want to work on their show. And because I don't like the photographer they work with for the advertising campaign, and I don't want my name on it. So that kind of, because now with the internet, the other thing that's changed is usually no one used to know who did ads. Now everyone does. I mean, with the whole debacle with the YSL belt on the Chloe campaign, and I mean, you Google search it and you can find out who it is like that. And that's, I mean, could you imagine? I mean, devastated. And that's how much, and some of these older stylists, they better watch out, because it's changing. Our whole business has changed. Like you were saying before about the blogs, these kids come in and they think because they have a blog, but some of them do have power. Yeah. Depending on how many readers they have.
And also Laura, the owner of Screaming Mimi's, she was Sony's first, before any person was ever hired to do someone's wardrobe and style branding. She was hired to do Cyndi Lauper's because she worked at the store.
Yeah.
And from there, Sony hired her to do Nirvana.
Yeah. Huge.
Kids on the Block, blah, blah. But she's old school stylist.
Yeah.
Old friends with everyone.
Yeah.
And so she even she sees it firsthand how much it's changed.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
The business, and I think also magazines are moving onto the internet. No one knows what's going to happen with that. No one knows. It's I don't think they've quite figured it out yet. I think it's going to be something in video. I think video is going to be the future for us, which is great. I mean, because we're like film directors already, right? We have to do all the research. I mean, on an editorial, which is what gives us our voice and our, we have to sit and say, this is what we want to do. And then we have to make it happen with everyone, just like a film director. So I'm really excited about moving into film. But it's really funny because these photographers, are they going to be the ones that are going to be giving us the jobs in the future? I don't know. So I'm kind of even though I love the photographers I work with. There's a couple of people that are so inspiring and they push me and I push them, and that's the kind of great relationship you want. And we'll talk about photographer relationships tomorrow. But it's so important to watch what's happening with media, because we are driven by marketing. It's our magazines are our art form in a lot of ways. It's that's where our advertising goes. That's where our shows end up inspiring what's in the magazines if you're lucky. and now it's all starting to move onto the internet. And I don't think it's going to look the same way and be the same way that it has been. And that's why it's even with Fashionista, the amount of people that the column reaches is incredible. It's the circulation of Fashionista is 3 or 4 times bigger than Love. So, and then someone like I think Fashionology has 1 million plus users, 2 million users. Do you think, Steph? Who are the ones that have the 1 million plus users? There's a couple.
No, I think Fashionology has a lot because they're owned by Sugar.
Oh, right.
And so they redirect a lot of people.
Right. Well, I mean, it's some of these blogs have just as much circulation as Vogue. And not that to say that they have the same power, but they have a readership. And that's kind of what's changing, and so you can't really ignore it. And also it's you can build your voice, what I've been doing with my stylist voice on Fashionista has been great, because I'm starting to be because like mass market people, like when I work for a little bit more mass companies like sports brand, or like let's say I used to work like a Target, or even like a Coca-Cola company, kind of, like soda company might call and want like a big stylist to come and consult on something. They Google us. That's the first thing people do now, is Google you. And then they look and they want it because they want to make sure you're an expert. And they don't just look at your book, which is one part of your voice. They're looking at what content is about you on the internet. So, I mean, that's kind of why I started driving that. And it's just part of being a business person too, is your marketing, driving a marketing campaign. Okay, so any questions? Does that help with the agent conversation? Or is there more questions about that?
No, I think that's...
It's clear. I mean, really practice, test as much as you can with as much as you can. And the great thing about testing is that you can find a crew of photographers. You can look and find crews of people who are in the same place you are, and that's your generation, to really like great hair people, hair and makeup photographers. And also, people are judging us, stylists, by who we work with. We're constantly judged by that. And when I interviewed Amy Astley a couple months ago, that's a big thing. She's like, I really look at what photographers they're working with when she's looking at new stylists, because they're judging our taste based on who we're choosing to work with. So it's another part of our voice, is like, oh, okay, finding the photographers. And part of testing is finding that, because it's like, sometimes it's just like, it's chopped liver. It's like, really? But then just getting the practice and being like, oh, okay, and then maybe you can push that person and make them into something amazing. Maybe, sometimes it's about us, stylists, create the picture. I mean, I've sat there and done everything but freaking press the thing before. I'm sitting there at the monitor going, okay, you model do this, and can you change the light, and then and it's just part of what we do, and it makes us so much better at what we do, and we can charge so much more money when we do that. So it's test, and then you just get out there with your book, and the feedback that you'll get from agents will be so helpful in helping you figure out, and also ask them, like the way you said about it's like, ask people, what do you think my voice is? Like, what do you think I'm trying to say? And Adam and I were having a conversation when he started working with me. I said, well, what's your voice? And he was like, what do you mean? So am I embarrassing? I don't mean to embarrass you. Because people don't talk about it. It's what they hire us based on, but no one's talking about that. No one's talking about, your voice. And it's like, I was trying to put a name to it. And I was like, well, it's a voice. And I was talking to quite a few other friends of mine who have been in the business a long time, like I have. And they were like, yeah, it's a voice. And and so we started working on breaking down Adam's voice. And so what I usually do, so you can really look at that, to look at what your voice could be, is we started looking at the shows that he loved. Like, who are the designers that you love, that you die for? Who are the, artists, who are the photographers that you die for? Like, if you could work with anybody, who are those people? And when you make that list, it becomes very clear what you're into. Like, very clear. So, do you mind if I talk about yours? We were going through, and first I said magazines. Like, if you could work for any magazine, like top 3, which ones would it be? And you'll really quickly see who. And you said French Vogue, no, American Vogue, French Vogue, and Love, yeah. So that gives me a very kind of clear idea, at least like aesthetic for him. And then we started talking about who are your favorite designers, and we started talking about Rick Owens, Givenchy, Dior Homme, and Lanvin. And it's interesting to me to throw Lanvin in there, because Lanvin is very different to me from Givenchy and Rick Owens, right? So we could start to see like what Adam's voice is. And then we started talking about photographers. And who do we say for photographers? Stephen Klein, Mizell, and Paolo Roversi. And so again, it was like Paolo Roversi. There's a romanticism in there with what Adam is interested in. And that can change, and it will change. Like, as you start to research fashion and see more designers and see more photographers. But with Stephen Klein, I thought the Stephen Klein thing was really interesting because he's so dark. But I guess the darkness also comes with like Rick Owens, and so you can really, so that's like, if you're not really sure, like, I don't really know what I'm trying to say here, it's really good to, when you're working on your voice, to kind of start breaking down like what are your favorites? Because that's just our voice is what we're like attracted to. Is that helpful? Any other questions about voice? No?
I just want to say that I'm happy that, I read it because I've had a hard time, I think, on test shoots and other things, getting confused with talking, getting confused about my voice with what the photographer wants and what their thoughts are and trying to collaborate all together and just, if you know your voice, you can just stick in those guidelines and you will be happy with,
Yeah.
You'll get a more consistent range of work.
And that's what agents and clients are looking for when they look at your book, is they're looking for a consistency. If it's all over the place and you have, you're doing really sexy and then you're doing really intellectual, they're like, you don't know what you're saying. And they'll just be like, okay, flip, 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 hand your book right back to you. Bye, nice to meet you. Yeah, Sika?
In terms of the actual book, putting it together, do you think about how you're going to put it together?
Absolutely. We do. I sit, that's another thing an agent's amazing for, is my agent and I sit and we have like a 3-hour meeting and we argue and argue and argue about the order of my book. Because it's just like a show, right? It's just like a runway show. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you have to keep them excited. And you can do a lot with showing your focuses by putting stories that have a similar feel, even though, I try not to repeat myself too much in my book, and you guys can see my book online, so you can kind of get an idea, and that is in the same order as my book that goes out right now, because sometimes it gets disjointed with the internet. But we're super specific about the order, and usually I like to do it by types of photographers that work together. So there's people who shoot point and shoot, so it's hard edge line, flash, super kind of natural looking, moving around movement. And then there's people who shoot the really austere studio stuff. And I like to put those together because it just ends up looking better. And I always keep the story that I shoot, I try to do always 4 pictures or more because it shows that you can tell a story, which is really important. It's really important too when you're doing a series of images for an advertising or commercial job, whether it's an ad or an in-store, because they need to make sure that you can recreate different looks in the same voice or the same story for 30 looks. I mean, I've had to do it for 110 looks before, and I thought I was gonna kill myself. But it was such amazing practice to have you have to do 110 looks, and you have to make them all make sense in the same story. And and it's the best practice at what you're doing. So with your book though, yeah, it's really important. And when you're testing, right? So when you're testing, it's easy to forget that because everyone's there for free, but you're giving your time. So you have to make sure you're there to get what you need to. So it's really important because I know that there's not tons and tons of people to choose from, but finding people that you do align with and you like their work enough to know that what you're gonna get in the end, you're gonna be okay with or happy with. I mean, I'm saying you're gonna be okay because sometimes that's all you can get with the test shoot because it's for free. And then there's people, you'll find a couple of those people that you get so happy about shooting with them because you love what they do. Something else I was gonna say about that. So my tricky way of making sure that what I want gets shot is I only bring stuff to the shoot that I wanna shoot, especially for a test or editorial. Unless, with editorial it's different because sometimes you're shooting credits, but that's why it's with celebrities, it's genius. Because then, anything they wear, you're gonna be okay with it. I don't bring anything that I like. And it's kind of a stylist trick because it's we don't have any more clothes, this is it, Because really it is it's our name on it, so it's really important to protect your identity. But that's why with celebrities, sometimes people get, I know it's easy for stylists to just want to appease them, and they end up with a whole bunch of clothes and a whole bunch of pictures they hate and can't even use in their book. And that's what's the point? I mean, the practice was great, but really we do test shoots and editorial to market ourselves. It's our marketing campaign. So it's really important, and it takes that practice, but sometimes it just takes practice to and it's such the razor's edge to learn how to take care of people and still hold your voice. And I mean, it's some of the great people I've worked with, some of them still struggle with it sometimes. But the really, really good ones who get paid the millions of dollars, they do it. It's and you never even notice anything's going on. It's it just seems so simple. So, Okay, let's see if I've forgotten anything. We were just talking about the practicing, which is good.